Right now, at Walt Disney World, construction crews are ripping custom lighting from the ceilings of a 3-year-old building. A bridge where paying guests once steered a fictional starship through a space battle has been demolished down to bare concrete. This building cost an estimated $300 million. It opened in 2022 and closed 18 months later without turning a profit once. Disney took a $250 million write-off just to walk away. That works out to roughly $2.5 million per room, just to close the doors. But the money is not the strangest part of the story. What they are putting inside that building right now is. Because here is the detail that makes the Galactic Starcruiser unlike any other failure in theme park history. Almost everyone who went inside called it one of the best experiences of their lives. Guests wept openly during the finale. They hugged the performers on the way out. They posted emotional testimonials that money cannot buy. And then they never came back. To understand why a place that people genuinely loved became one of the fastest, most expensive collapses Disney has ever absorbed, you need to know what it actually costs to walk through the door. The Galactic Starcruiser was not a hotel in any normal sense. There was no pool, no spa, no lobby bar, no view of Florida. You arrived at a terminal designed to look like a spaceport, walked through blast doors, and for the next 48 hours, you were immersed in the story, leaving only for a single scheduled excursion to Galaxy's Edge inside Hollywood Studios. Every window was a screen displaying animated stars on a loop. Your cabin was roughly the size of a modest cruise ship stateroom, except with no balcony, no porthole, and no sunlight. The starting price for 2 guests, 2 nights, $4,800. A family of 4 paid closer to $6,000. To feel that number, compare it to Disney's own product. $6,000 on the Disney Cruise Line could buy a 7-night Caribbean voyage for a family of 4 in the cheapest cabin on the cheapest sailing. A real ocean outside a real window, real ports of call, real sunshine, and 5 more nights than the Starcruiser offered. Disney was asking families to pay more for 2 nights locked inside a windowless building on a Florida highway than for a full week on the open Caribbean. But the price alone is not what killed this place. The price just made the real structural flaw impossible to survive. Disney announced the concept at D23 in 2017 and spent 5 years building it. When bookings opened, the first voyages sold out in hours. Star Wars superfans, Disney adults with deep pockets, all racing to be first through the blast doors. Once inside, your meals were scheduled to the minute. Your activities plotted on a rigid itinerary. Lightsaber training, bridge crew missions, a dinner show with characters who knew your name, secret missions delivered through an app on your phone. By nearly every first-hand account, as a piece of immersive theater, it was unlike anything the industry had ever seen. So if the product was genuinely that good, what exactly went wrong? The answer is not complicated. It is just devastating. The Starcruiser had 100 rooms, maximum capacity, roughly 500 guests per voyage, 3 voyages a week, 52 weeks a year. Disney needed every one of those rooms filled, continuously, at close to $5,000 per booking, just to cover operating costs. And the pool of humans on Earth willing and able to spend that kind of money on 2 nights in a building with no windows turned out to be very, very small. The superfans who loved it most proved the problem. They went once, told the world how incredible it was, and never came back. Because $4,800 is not a "let's do that again next summer" price. It is a once-in-a-lifetime price. And once in a lifetime does not fill 100 rooms 3 times a week. But the demand collapsing was only half of what was killing the numbers. Because the costs could not come down either. Disney ran 2 complete casts of actors simultaneously on every single voyage, not one cast with understudies waiting somewhere off stage. 2 full ensembles, both in costume, both in character, both embedded in the guest storyline, both on payroll at the same time. If one performer got injured or fell ill mid-voyage, the replacement was already in the building, already performing for a different group. That is the staffing model of a major Broadway production. Except Broadway sells 800 to 1,000 seats per performance, 8 shows a week, to a city of 8 million people. The Starcruiser sold 100 rooms per voyage, to a market that was vanishing week by week, and you could not cut the performers. Without them, the Starcruiser was just a windowless building with bunk beds and scheduled meals. A convention center you were not allowed to leave. With them, the operating costs were staggering, and the revenue was collapsing in the other direction. That alone should have been enough to kill it. But the physical building made sure there was no coming back. The marquee spaces were genuinely impressive. The bridge, the lightsaber training pod, the atrium where the storyline climaxed in a theatrical finale that rivaled anything on a Disney stage. But guests spent the majority of their 48 hours in the hallways and the cabins. And multiple reviewers described those hallways the same way. A suburban high school built in the 1970s. Low ceilings, narrow corridors, carpet that belonged in a dentist's waiting room. You are paying $3,000 a night, and the walk from your cabin to dinner feels like the route to a guidance counselor's office. The disconnect between the marketing, which promised a gleaming starship of polished metal and dramatic lighting, and the reality, which in places felt like a convention center with gray walls, became a credibility problem Disney could not fix without tearing out the interior it had just spent $300 million building. They would eventually tear it out, just not for the reasons anyone expected. By November of 2022, 8 months after opening, some voyages were running at 25% occupancy, roughly 125 guests wandering a facility built for 500, costume performers sometimes outnumbering them in the corridors. Disney was canceling dinner seatings and cutting cast hours. 8 months in, and the response was to DM the lights. Therefore, Disney did something it almost never does. It panicked. 30% off for annual pass holders. This is the company that pushed single-day theme park tickets past $200 and watched guests line up regardless. Disney does not cut prices by a third unless the patient is already on the table, but the discounting only accelerated the collapse. The entire financial model depended on near full occupancy at near full price. Cut the price by a third, and you need every room sold on every voyage just to approach break-even on what you were already losing at 70% occupancy with no discount. They were not selling every room at full price. They certainly were not selling them at 30% off. The Starcruiser was now bleeding from both ends, falling revenue and rising per-guest costs, and no amount of marketing could close the gap. On May 18, 2023, Disney announced the Galactic Starcruiser would close permanently. The final voyage departed September 28th. Guests checked out on September 30th. The blast doors that were supposed to transport you to a galaxy far, far away closed for the last time, and the building went dark. Disney Parks chairman Josh D'Amaro delivered the eulogy at a JP Morgan conference with a line that will live in theme park history. It didn't perform exactly like we wanted it to perform. $300 million. 18 months. Not a single profitable voyage. Didn't perform exactly like we wanted. Disney disclosed $250 million in accelerated depreciation tied to the closure, $2.5 million per room to close the doors. The building sat dark for more than a year. No guests, no performers, no lightsaber training. A $300 million structure on some of the most expensive entertainment real estate on the planet, doing absolutely nothing. But someone else decided to tell the story Disney never would. In May of 2024, a YouTuber named Jenny Nicholson released a 4-hour documentary titled The Spectacular Failure of the Star Wars Hotel. 4 hours, a single video essay, about a building that lasted a year and a half. It has been watched more than 9 million times. More people have watched the autopsy of this place than ever set foot inside it while it was alive. Nicholson documented everything. The moments of genuine magic, the cafeteria-quality food, the school hallways, the finale that made her cry despite all of it. The video became the definitive record of what $300 million of Disney ambition actually looked like from the inside. Extraordinary and broken in the same breath. But Nicholson's documentary was not the final chapter, because what Disney decided to do with the building next is the part that nobody saw coming. In January of 2025, Disney confirmed the building's new purpose. Walt Disney Imagineering, the division that designs and builds the company's parks around the world, would take it over as office space. Construction permits filed later that year described the work in 2 words: demolition and reconfiguration. The fine print adds a detail that stings. Few exceptions for historic value. The bridge where guests once piloted a starship is being torn apart. The cabins are being stripped to the studs. In their place, desks, conference rooms, cubicles. The most ambitious guest experience Disney ever attempted is becoming the office where Imagineers sit and plan the next one. The Galactic Starcruiser did not fail because the Star Wars brand lost its grip. Galaxy's Edge, the Star Wars land right next door, still draws millions every year. It did not fail because the experience was poor. By nearly every first-hand account, the experience was remarkable. It failed because Disney engineered a product with the staffing costs of a Broadway production, the pricing of a luxury ocean cruise, the physical charm of a convention center, and the total capacity of a country bed and breakfast. 100 rooms. That was the entire addressable market on any given night. 100 chances to sell a $5,000 product to a customer who, in almost every case, was a parent trying to give their children a holiday. The kind of family that budgets a Disney vacation in hundreds, not thousands. Disney found out too late that the Venn diagram of people who love Star Wars enough, people who can afford $6,000 for 2 nights, and people willing to spend it locked inside a building with no windows is vanishingly small. And within that circle, almost nobody comes back twice. Disney confused building something magical with building something that could survive. The distance between those two things cost them $250 million. The building still stands behind Hollywood Studios at Walt Disney World, looking the same from the outside. Inside, the starship is gone. Where lightsabers once hummed and guests cried at a finale they did not expect to care about, Imagineers will soon sit at desks, designing whatever Disney is certain will work next. But here's the part worth sitting with. Disney is not the only company building experiences too expensive for the people who love them most. Immersive entertainment is booming right now. Meow Wolf, Secret Cinema, Punch Drunk. All of them betting that audiences will pay premium prices to step inside a story. Even Sleep No More, the gold standard of the genre, went dark after 14 years in early 2025. And every single one of them is staring down the same maths the Starcruiser could not solve. How many people on Earth will pay this much, this often, to walk into a building and call it magic? The Starcruiser was not a freak accident. It was a proof of concept for an entire category of entertainment that Disney believed would define the next decade of the parks business. That proof of concept died in 18 months. And the answer it left behind is smaller than anyone in the industry wants to believe. A 4-hour documentary about a place that lasted 18 months has now been watched by more people than the place itself ever served. The building is still right there at Walt Disney World, being quietly hollowed out, one cubicle at a time. The magic was real. The maths never were. If the distance between what something is worth and what it costs to keep alive is the kind of question that keeps you here, subscribe.